Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about my favorite characters in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. Or better yet, what the title is going to be ranking the protagonists of these movies. So, in total there's 7 I believe, because Alice repeats, and then Nancy's technically in New Nightmare. She plays herself, Heather Langenkamp, but it's we'll just count that as repeating. So, I believe it's 7. So starting at number 7 for protagonist category, you could do 8 if you want to make Heather and Nancy 2 separate people. But I think that she's sort of, we'll just count her as 1, because she ends up becoming Nancy sort of towards the end of that movie of New Nightmare anyways. So number 7 for me is Nancy Holbrook, not Nancy Thompson. This is Rooney Mara's character. I'll just call her Rooney for, simplicity's sakes and stuff like that. But I don't think Rooney Mara is a bad actress. I do not think so at all. I think she's really good in some stuff she's in, but just this movie, she had no care in the world for. She didn't really care about the franchise, didn't care about Freddy, didn't care about the original Nancy. She didn't really give heart to the character. And that's probably the biggest weakness of this film, besides some of the stuff they introduced that just does not sit right. She doesn't help this film in being to me, a terrible film in this franchise. Not the worst movie, but in this franchise, to me, nothing original comes from this film. And she's just like a watered down, less interesting version of Nancy Thompson. And unlike Nancy, who's cunning, creative, and a great final girl, this Nancy is just sleepy the whole time, basically, like tired and very just uncaring in this film. That's why I've seen most people say Quentin, his character, is their favorite. And I'd say out of the two, if we're going on this film's sake, he's the better protagonist of this film. So if you want to count him on your list, you should just go right ahead and do it. But I went with Nancy because she seems to be the main character in the remake, I think, in the promotional stuff and things like that, and in the story she is, too. So, number 6, the next one, to me, is Maggie, or Catherine Kruger, the daughter of Freddy. She's Freddy's Dead's protagonist, and I don't think she's a bad character, right? But compared to the rest in this list, I just don't think she holds up. So, the thing with Maggie, I think it's believable Freddy had a daughter, but like a lot of people say, would it work better if it was an estranged, like, not just estranged, but like, he had slept with a prostitute and that was his daughter. It was more, instead of it being a family. But I think that also, a lot of serial killers do have families, so it's possible, but I think it would have made a lot more sense if, you have Maggie be, like I said, some prostitute Freddy met or something, or some old girlfriend or one night stand he had or something. That just makes a lot more sense to me. I think she's a decent character, and she's definitely the best Freddy's Dead has to offer. She's the best character in that movie. But Freddy's Dead doesn't have that great a character, so it's not the high standards, honestly. But she's not a bad character. I'd give her a C- on this list now, because she's a big step up from our number 7 place, but she's not, compared to number 5, she's a little bit lower to me. So number 5 on the list is Laurie from Freddy vs. Jason. When I was younger, I said that she was always, I didn't like her as a character, but I've grown to think she's not that bad. I think she does good with some of the trauma of her mother being killed. She thought it was in a car accident, but it was actually by Freddy. And I think she does good with some of the trauma. And her, not her wanting to move on. She doesn't want to move on from Will. She does good when she's doing things like that. I think she shouldn't have been the one to kill Freddy. I think it should have been Jason, the one to decapitate him, but, not the worst. I'd give her a C. So the top 4, I'll have a lot more to talk about as we get into, let's see, who's in our top 4? I'm thinking right now. So at this point, the decision's kind of hard to make, because you guys might be surprised by my number 1. It's changed since June, since I started this about 2 months ago. But at number 4, these are when they get to me, A-tier characters. All 4 of these are like characters that have been, I think you can make a case for being the best in the franchise. So number 4 is Jesse Walsh. I just rewatched A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 recently, and I think number 6 was not a good placement, or number 5, where I put it, was not a good placement for. I think it deserves to be higher, because as much as it's a big tone different from the original, Mark Patton does such a good job of being this character he's going mad, basically. He's scared. This thing's trying to take over his body. Him and his family's moved to this house, and this man is trying to, use him to kill people. And he's a great scream. He does. You can see the look of horror he has, and that transformation scene when he's being, Freddy's coming out of his body, is extremely gnarly, and it's extremely not graphic, but it's terrifying. You just see him his Freddy's head coming out of his stomach, and Freddy's eye in the back of his throat, just amazing. And I think Jesse could have been. I kind of hate how this movie's kind of swept under the rug, and I think Jesse should have been brought up in a later installment, because the way his character, the last we see of him is he's on that bus in that last minute scene in The Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Now, to me, that's a dream. I think Freddy was beaten, and a lot of people say, well, they probably all died, Lisa and Jesse. And I think Lisa's one of the better deuteragonists of this series. She might even be higher than Jesse when I eventually cover the deuteragonists of this franchise. But I think Mark Patton did a great job for this film, and just give it another try. I'd say it's just how I talk about Dream Child stuff. Give that one another try too, and give Dream Master another try. Just give this one another try, because Mark Patton is a big bright spot of this, and Freddy's another bright spot too. Robert Englund, this one, how intimidating, and there's more less comedic he is, more fear, more dark energy and stuff. Yeah. Just give it a try. Number 3 for me. Here's where it's gonna I know she's a fan favorite in this franchise, but it's Kristen, number 3 for me. So if Patricia Arquette would have came back for Nightmare on Elm Street 4, I feel like she might move up. I love Kristen. I think the trauma she is, how scared she is in the third one, how just nervous she is. Like the opening when she gets her wrist slit by Freddy, and how her mother thinks she did that to herself, and she gets into, and she's just becoming the leader, sort of, carrying the torch off from Nancy. You would kind of wonder what would happen if she would have been this recurring character too. And Patricia Arquette did great as her. I wish she would have came back for Nightmare on Elm Street 4. I don't think Tuesday Night did that bad, but compared to Patricia, she just did not do a good job. She did an okay job, but it's not a great or outstanding job. So, on from Kristen. Number 2, this is where it's going to make a lot of you guys probably upset with me. Voice your opinion. For the longest time, she was my favorite too. I made a whole video explaining why she's my favorite Final Girl. She's still top 2 for me. But the more I watch 4 and 5, I think I know who my favorite Final Girl is. And my favorite one in this franchise is definitely. So number 2 is Nancy Thompson. I love Nancy Thompson. She is, in that first movie, she is so resourceful. She doesn't hide. She attacks him the whole time. She plans on it, and just the fear she has, just seeing everybody she loves, all her friends die around her. But this is how she wants to have the endurance to keep back and fight Freddy. Making plans to, have Glenn pull her out of her dream, to save her. And again, Glenn is one of my favorite deuteragonists in this franchise. And he's great. And let's also talk about, we'll group Hedley and Camp in here too, because technically she plays herself. I think that's her best performance in The Nightmare. And at the end when she's having to be Nancy, that's why I put these two together. But objectively, she is the best Final Girl in this franchise. But this is my opinion, and my subjective opinion is number 1, Alice Johnson. I was on the train where I hated A Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5. I think I've commented that on someone's video before. I always seen reviews about it, and when I watched, I thought, oh, look at this drop in quality. But upon rewatch, especially the Dream Child, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, I've just seen that the stuff that movie like delves into, her dad's arc from being a bad alcoholic in part 4. Now he's recovering in part 5, and he wants to be there for Alice and her child. And then you have Greta with all like the eating disorder, and then you have the themes of parenthood with Alice. That's big topics for '89, especially in a horror film. So, even though, and it was very uncut, it's very cut down. But I've talked about why I like that movie before. This is about Alice. We meet Alice in part 4. She's very timid, shy, and she just gains this confidence towards the end. And people call her forgettable, but I think Lisa Wilcox does a great job, especially in part 5, because from the get-go, she has a plan to beat Freddy. When she finds out that doesn't beat her in the bush, she's ready to do it. She knows how to. She is a lot stronger. She does great acting moments, like the emotion she gives when Dan's parents try to take away Jacob. And the strength she gives by the end of this, and thankfully they didn't kill her off in Freddy's Dead. I think she left Springwood, but I also really don't consider Freddy's Dead a part of it. I know you have to in your canon because Freddy vs. Jason reference is sort of the end of it, So it's overall, that's why Alice is number 1. I think she shows so much emotion, and she became my favorite. So that's a very controversial opinion, I imagine, because most people would put Kristen or Nancy up top, and maybe I would. It could switch back and forth, but Alice Johnson is a very underrated final girl, and she's definitely the best part of part 5, and one of the best parts of part 4 too. So when I see people call her bland, I just don't think. I think it's a little absurd because she's not that bland. Especially when she gets all of her powers of her friends and stuff. And I think there's part of her when she's shy at the beginning. I don't know if I think it's due to her mother her mother passing. I don't know. It's something like that. I think Rick's doing. The amount of stuff she goes through in these 2 films and she's still strong is amazing to me. She loses a lot. Think about this. She loses Dan, her boyfriend, in part 5. She loses her mother when she was younger. She loses Rick, her brother. Her dad's an alcoholic in part 4. He recovers though. She loses her best friends multiple times. She loses Kristen, Sheila, Debbie, Greta, Mark. So she's losing all her best friends. And you can say Nancy did too. She lost her mom too. And she's having her child threatened by Freddy. And she still is strong through all of it. And that's why, like I said, that's why she's probably my favorite in this franchise. So this is just my list. If I had to make this, I want to make a Night Ride on Street video per month because it's my favorite horror franchise, and there's still a lot of stuff to cover. So in September, I believe I'll cover the Protagonists ranked. And then the next month, I'll rank my favorite Freddy's, designs and stuff. So until then, at least with this franchise, I'll have something new coming out. I'll be covering the Scream movies soon, hopefully, towards the second week of August. But until then, I love you guys. Take care. Stay blessed. Christ loves you. See you in the next one.